Imagine if ChatGPT could remember every conversation you've ever had with it, and not just remember it, but really understand the concepts that you discuss so that it can refer back to them for future use. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly that. So I've been developing an app called Lumen, and this is an extension to Claude. And so this allows Claude to interact with a collection of markdown notes that I can then read using Obsidian. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the current problem with using LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude for sort of complex research tasks, and how Lumen is going to fix that. Then I'll give a brief demo of the functionality and explain the sort of technical implementations at the moment. And then finally, I'll talk about potential applications for the system and how you can get started with it. So I'm a PhD student studying maths, and the problem that I have when using LLMs to really understand papers is that they struggle when you really need to have detailed knowledge of multiple references to understand a problem. So ChatGPT has some mathematics in its training data, and it's pretty good at knowing sort of widely known mathematics. But if you want to get it to understand, like if you ask it about sort of very specific questions, say like a result in a particular paper, then it won't be so good at that. And so the way that you can get around this is you can just upload that paper to ChatGPT and then ask it about it. But then the problem becomes if the result then relies on sort of specific results in multiple other papers. So then you would have to upload all of those papers to ChatGPT, but then that would sort of go over the limit of what you can ask it. So a potential way that you could get around this is something called retrieval augmented generation. So this is where you submit a query to an AI system. It then works out sort of what resources are needed to understand that query, loads those into the LLM, and then reads all the papers and understands the things. So for research, for example, say you just had your kind of library of papers that you've been using. So this would be one way of making an app that can interact with papers. And there are some apps that do this. So basically like kind of OpenAI's Deep Research and also Gemini's Deep Research is essentially doing this, but they also search the internet for papers. And there's also another app called Elicit, which does a similar thing, but you can also upload your own papers to it. So this is slightly better because you can curate the references that the LLM is searching through. So the idea for the app that I'm developing, Lumen, is to get the LLM to pre-process the papers. So when you upload a paper, it then sort of splits the concepts up into little chunks, and then it can reference those chunks when it's trying to understand future papers. And importantly, what it can do is it can link the concepts between the notes. So this is a concept called the Zettelkasten or slip box notes, which was introduced by Nicholas Luhmann, hence the name. So the idea is that you have a Zettelkasten that's curated by the LLM. And then whenever you want to understand a new paper, it can read the paper and then link it to existing notes in the Zettelkasten. And this is a really efficient way to get the LLM to understand the concepts that it needs. And so Lumen would go a step further than these sort of traditional retrieval augmented generation systems by directing the resources that it wants to access itself. And that's kind of the main idea behind what I'm doing. So I'm now going to show what Claude can do if you give it a load of notes. So this is an example sort of Obsidian database of notes. So I have some information on, say, mathematics, and these have all been generated by Claude. So basically I've given it various papers and asked it to make atomic notes. So for example, we have this note, and Claude currently has access to these notes. So I'm using the MCP tool, and it can do things like delete lines in a note, delete notes, edit notes, and so on. And so sort of the most basic functionality that I have here is I can ask it about the notes that I have. So I could say something like, what notes do we have? On, say, like P SL2 C connections. So if I ask it, so the MCP functionality is a little bit is not the nicest interface with Claude at the moment, but I can do that anyway. So this runs a search through the text and then reads the notes, so you can see it's found a load of things on the on SL2C connections. So now it's going through and reading the notes. And now it's giving an overview about this topic. Another thing that I have is I have a library of papers. So I have a reference manager called Zotero, and I've been able to give Claude access to this library of notes. So for example, I could ask Claude to sort of give an overview of the paper of manifolds with analytic corners, for example. So after giving it this query, it's tried to use this MCP tool, so I have to allow this again. And then it's found the paper and it's going to read the PDF. So it's got access to this paper and it can, get an overview of it. So this is really like, quite a good starting point for this system. And so really what I want to do is develop this into a system where Lumen automatically generates a knowledge database from the papers that you give it. And so in this way, you get a really detailed understanding and a very sort of queryable data set of all of the information that you want to understand when carrying out research. But it would also be very useful for almost any sort of knowledge-based workflow. And so the way that this system is implemented is you literally just have a collection of text-based notes that you allow the LLM to read, search through, and edit. And you also give it sort of style guidelines on how it should write the notes. So if you just give an LLM a paper and say, write notes on this paper, then it'll just give you sort of like an overview like we saw with Claude. But what you can do is you can prompt it to write sort of atomic style or Zettelkasten style notes, which are heavily linked together. And so the idea that what Lumen will do is it will first write a note and give kind of inline links and sort of link between notes. And in the implementation, what I do is I get it to link to notes even if they don't exist yet. And then once you've got notes that have some broken links in them, maybe, you can go through and then make new notes on the information that's missing in sort of an automated way. And so the kind of idea for the future would be that you have a system that's very aware that it might make mistakes or might have problems in it. And so it will go through and check that what it's writing is logically consistent. And it can do this by, say, searching the web, accessing new resources, and then also sort of ask, and it would also be able to sort of ask the user to upload certain papers. And so a problem with these deep research tools at the moment is that they can only access information that's available on the web. So if you have papers that are, say, in a journal or older, then the information from these papers is perhaps a little bit sort of out of reach of the deep research assistant. So just making Lumen just ask the user to go and get a paper is probably the quickest way at the moment to get around those issues. So the potential applications for this software, I mean, obviously it's a really powerful research tool and I'm using it a lot for my own research. It can be used for any system where you want to give an LLM a certain amount of memory. So for example, one of the main ideas that I have for this is to get the system to sort of automatically process previous conversations that you've had. So this would be very much like speaking to a human, where you want the LLM to remember the previous interactions that you've had with it. So this would make it much more like a virtual assistant and much less like you're just talking to a chatbot that's going to forget everything once you finish the conversation. And so how can you get started with this? Well, I've set up a website that you can have a look. At the moment, if you're watching this just as I'm recording this, then it won't be available straight away because it's still very much in development. But you can sign up for the mailing list. But there should be a form on the website. Where you can put down your details if you're interested in hearing more about the development. Also, I'm going to post more videos on this YouTube channel, so maybe consider subscribing if you're interested. Thanks for watching.